Congratulations on the pregnancy, Mrs. Campbell. The ultrasound technician's cheerful voice echoed in the small examination room as I stared at the grainy black and white image on the screen. My baby. Our baby. Would you like me to print some pictures to take home to your husband? Yes, please, I replied, my voice thick with emotion. Nathan will be thrilled. The technician printed several copies, handing them to me with a warm smile. I carefully placed them in my purse, already imagining Nathan's face when I showed him. After 3 years of marriage and countless negative pregnancy tests, we had finally succeeded. My husband would be overjoyed, at least that's what I thought. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Stopped by Nathan's favorite bakery on the way home, picking up a box of the chocolate croissants he loved, planning to make this revelation special. Our modern 2-story home in Seattle's Queen Anne neighborhood welcomed me with silence as I entered, setting my keys in the ceramic bowl Nathan had made during a pottery class we'd taken together last year. Nathan? I called out, surprised to find his car in the driveway this early in the afternoon. He usually didn't return from the marketing firm where he worked as creative director until after 6. No answer. I placed the pastry box and ultrasound. Photos on our kitchen island, noticing Nathan's laptop open on the dining table. Unusual. He was meticulous about his work equipment, rarely leaving it unattended or unlocked. That's when I heard it. A woman's laugh floating down from upstairs, followed by Nathan's distinctive low chuckle. My blood turned to ice in my veins. No, it couldn't be. But it was. I moved through our home like a ghost, my footsteps silent on the hardwood floors. The master bedroom door was partially open, and the sounds coming from inside confirmed my worst fears before I even pushed it wider. Nathan and a woman I recognized as his assistant, Veronica, were in our bed. Our marital bed. Her red hair splayed across my pillowcase, her hands on my husband's back. I don't remember making a sound, but I must have, because suddenly they were scrambling, Nathan's face transforming from pleasure to shock as he saw me, standing in the doorway. Olivia! I thought you had that doctor's appointment. I did, I replied, my voice eerily calm as shock settled over me like a shroud. It went well. The baby looks healthy. Complete confusion flashed across his face, before understanding dawned. Baby? What baby? Our baby, I said, one hand instinctively moving to my still flat stomach. The one I'm carrying. The one I just saw on an ultrasound. The one whose pictures are downstairs next to the chocolate croissants I bought to surprise you with the news. Veronica was hastily gathering her clothes, her face flushed with embarrassment and something else. Triumph, perhaps? Had this been going on long enough for her to feel she'd won something? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Olivia, I can explain, Nathan began, wrapping the sheet around his waist as he moved toward me. His blue eyes, the eyes I'd fallen in love with 5 years ago, were wide with panic. Don't bother, I said, turning to leave. I think the situation is perfectly clear. Please, let's talk about this, he pleaded, following me down the stairs, still clutching the sheet. It's not what it looks like. I stopped at the bottom of the staircase, turning to face him with an eerie calm that surprised even me. It's exactly what it looks like, Nathan. You're sleeping with your assistant in our home, in our bed, while I was at an appointment to check on our child. A child you didn't even know about until 5 minutes ago. It was a mistake, was it? I asked, picking up the ultrasound photos from the kitchen island. How long has this been going on? His hesitation told me everything I needed to know. Months, he finally admitted, his voice barely audible. Since the Christmas party. 4 months. While we were actively trying to conceive a child, my husband, was sleeping with his 24-year-old assistant. I see, I said, placing the ultrasound photos back on the counter. Well, I hope she was worth it. I walked to the door, grabbing my purse and keys. Where are you going? Nathan called after me. Olivia, please, we need to talk about this. About the baby. Now you want to talk about the baby? I laughed, a hollow sound devoid of humor. I'll be at Megan's, don't call me. Have your things out of the house by tomorrow night. You can't be serious, he protested. This is my home too. We need to work through this. I paused with my hand on the doorknob. There's nothing to work through, Nathan. It's over. As I walked to my car, I heard Veronica's voice from an upstairs window, asking if everything was okay. My husband's mistress, concerned about his welfare after being caught in my bed. The absurdity of it almost made me laugh. I drove to Megan's apartment in a daze, my mind oddly empty, my body on autopilot. Megan had been my best friend since college, the sister I never had. When she opened her door and saw my face, she knew immediately that something was terribly wrong. Olivia? What happened? Nathan is cheating on me, I said simply, the words strange and foreign on my tongue. With Veronica. I caught them in our bed. Megan pulled me into her apartment, her arms encircling me as the first tears finally came. I cried until my throat was raw and my eyes burned, soaking the shoulder of her blouse. There's more, I finally managed between sobs. I'm pregnant. Oh, Liv, Megan whispered, leading me to her couch. I'm so sorry. She made me tea, brought me tissues, and held my hand as I told her everything. The appointment, the ultrasound, the croissants, the sounds I'd heard from upstairs, the confrontation. What are you going to do? She asked when I'd finished, her face creased with concern. I don't know, I admitted. But I know I can't go back there, not tonight. You'll stay here as long as you need, Megan assured me. The guest room is yours. That night. As I lay in Megan's spare bedroom staring at the ceiling, my phone buzzed repeatedly with texts and calls from Nathan. I silenced it without reading any of his messages. Whatever excuses or explanations he had, I wasn't ready to hear them. Instead, I opened my email and composed a letter to Dr. Elena Winters, my mentor and the founder of Artemis Technologies, where I served as Chief Operating Officer. Elena, I wrote, I need to take a few personal days. A family emergency has arisen that requires my immediate attention. I'll be working remotely and will be available by phone for anything urgent. I've rescheduled tomorrow's meeting with the development team for next week. I hesitated, then added, I may also need to speak with you about some changes in my personal circumstances that might affect my work schedule in the coming months. I'll explain when I see you in person. Elena's response came within minutes, despite the late hour. Take all the time you need, Olivia. Your team can handle things for a few days. Call me if you need anything, professional or personal. Elena's unconditional support brought fresh tears to my eyes. At 56, she had built Artemis Technologies from nothing into one of Seattle's most successful software companies. She had hired me fresh out of business school 7 years ago, mentoring me and eventually promoting me to COO when I was just 29. The media had called it a risky move, but Elena had dismissed the criticism. I don't care about age, she had told the technology press. I care about vision, drive, and capability. Olivia Campbell has all three in abundance. Now, as I placed a protective hand over my stomach, I wondered how my pregnancy would affect the career I'd worked so hard to build. Artemis was launching a revolutionary cybersecurity platform in 6 months. The next year would be crucial for the company. As COO, I would be expected to work punishing hours, travel extensively, and be available around the clock, and I would be doing it all as a single mother. The thought should have terrified me, but instead, a strange calm settled over me. One problem at a time, I told myself. First, I needed to end my marriage. Then I would figure out how to balance motherhood and my career. As I drifted into an uneasy sleep, my last thought was of the ultrasound photo now tucked safely in my purse. Whatever happened next, I would protect my child, even if it meant facing the future alone. I woke to the sound of rain against the windows and the smell of coffee. For a moment, disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings, I reached for Nathan before the events of the previous day came flooding back. The doctor's appointment, the ultrasound, Nathan and Veronica in our bed. My hand moved instinctively to my stomach. "Good morning, little one," I whispered. "It's just you and me now." I got up, splashed water on my face, and joined Megan in her kitchen. She was dressed for work in a tailored suit, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, but her eyes were concerned as she handed me a mug of decaffeinated tea. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Like my life has imploded," I replied honestly. "But also strangely clear-headed." "Have you checked your phone?" I shook my head. "Not yet. Nathan called me last night after you fell asleep," Megan admitted. "He wanted to know if you were here, if you were okay." "What did you tell him?" "That you were safe but not ready to talk to him." She hesitated. "He sounded desperate, Liv." "Good," I said, surprising myself with the hardness in my voice. "He should be?" After Megan left for work, I finally checked my phone. 17 missed calls from Nathan, 23 text messages, 3 voicemails. I listened to the first voicemail. "Olivia, please call me back. I know I messed up badly, but we need to talk about this. About the baby. Please come home. I love you." Delete. The second. "Liv, it's me again. You're right to be angry. What I did was inexcusable. But we're going to have a child together. We need to figure this out. Please call me." Delete. The third. "I've been trying to reach you all night. I'm worried about you, about the stress on the baby. Please just let me know you're okay. I fired Veronica this morning. It's over with her, I swear. Please come home so we can talk." Delete. I read through his text messages, each more desperate than the last. "I'm so sorry. Please come home, I'll do anything to fix this. I love you. Please." Think of our baby. The last one made anger flare hot in my chest. How dare he use our child as leverage? The child he hadn't known about until yesterday? The child whose existence hadn't stopped him from betraying me? I typed a single reply. "I'll come to the house at 2 p.m. to discuss next steps. Have your things packed." His response was immediate. "Please, let's talk about this. Don't make any decisions yet." I didn't reply. Instead, I called Elena. "Olivia," she answered on the first ring. "How are you?" "I've been better," I admitted. "Do you have time to talk?" "For you? Always. Come to my house for lunch. Noon?" "Thank you," I said, feeling a surge of gratitude for this remarkable woman who had shaped my career and my life in so many ways. Elena lived in a modernist glass and cedar home perched on a cliff overlooking Puget Sound. When I arrived, she greeted me with a warm embrace, her silver hair gleaming in the rare spring sunshine. "You look terrible," she said bluntly, leading me onto her expansive deck where lunch was already laid out. "What's happened?" I told her everything, the words pouring out of me in a torrent. Elena listened without interruption, her keen gray eyes taking in every detail, every emotion that crossed my face. "And now I don't know what to do," I concluded. "I know I can't stay with him. I don't want to. But I'm 12 weeks pregnant. My career is at a crucial point, and I'm about to get divorced. I feel like I'm standing on quicksand." Elena refilled my herbal tea before responding. "First, congratulations on your pregnancy. Despite the circumstances, I know how much you've wanted this." "Thank you," I said, feeling a small spark of joy amidst the chaos. "Second, I want to assure you that your position at Artemis is secure. We will make whatever accommodations necessary for your pregnancy and maternity leave. Your value to the company isn't diminished because you're becoming a mother." Relief washed over me. I was worried about the timing with the platform launch. The platform will launch whether you're in the office 60 hours a week or working part-time from home, Elena interrupted. You've built an exceptional team. Trust them to execute your vision. And third, she continued, her expression hardening slightly, don't let Nathan manipulate you. Not with guilt, not with promises, and certainly not with the baby. I won't, I promised. I'm meeting him at the house at 2 to discuss divorce proceedings. Do you want company? My lawyer is excellent and could be there in an hour. I shook my head. Not yet. I need to do this part myself. Elena nodded, respecting my decision. Just remember who you are, Olivia. You're the woman who led the acquisition of NetSphere when you were 27. The strategist who increased our market share by 40% in 3 years. The executive who outmaneuvered Justin Price when he tried to poach our development team. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You've navigated corporate sharks in suits costing more than your monthly mortgage. You can handle one cheating husband. Her confidence in me restored my equilibrium. By the time I drove to my house, no, not my house anymore, I corrected myself, the house, I felt centered and clear about what needed to happen. Nathan's car was in the driveway, along with another vehicle I didn't recognize. A black BMW with rental car plates. I frowned, wondering if he'd brought someone with him, a lawyer perhaps. I used my key to enter, struck immediately by how foreign the space felt after just one night away. Had Nathan removed some of his things already? No, everything looked the same. It was I who had changed. I found him in the living room, pacing, nervously. He wasn't alone. A woman rose from the sofa as I entered, tall, elegant, in her early 60s, with silver-streaked dark hair and a face that was hauntingly familiar. Olivia, Nathan said anxiously. This is my mother, Margaret. She flew in this morning from Chicago. Margaret Campbell, my mother-in-law. The woman who had missed our wedding due to a scheduling conflict that Nathan had later admitted was her disapproval of me as his choice of wife. Too ambitious, she had told him. Too focused on her career. To be a proper partner. Mrs. Campbell, I said coolly, extending my hand. This is unexpected. She ignored my hand, instead moving forward to embrace me stiffly. Olivia. Nathan called me last night. He told me everything. I came as soon as I could. Did he? I stepped back from her embrace. And what exactly did he tell you? That he made a terrible mistake, Margaret replied, glancing at her son. But that you're expecting a child together, and he wants to make things right. I see. I placed my purse on the side table, noticing that the ultrasound photos were no longer on the kitchen island. And you flew across the country to help him convince me to forgive his affair? I came to help both of you work through this difficult time, she corrected, her tone conciliatory but her eyes hard. For the sake of your child. My child, I emphasized, will grow up knowing that their mother values herself enough not to stay with a man who betrayed her in the most fundamental way possible. People make mistakes, Olivia, Margaret said. Marriage is about forgiveness and commitment, especially when children are involved. Interesting perspective, I replied. Did you give Nathan the same advice when he was growing up? To stay with someone who betrays you? To model for your children that infidelity has no consequences? Color rose in Margaret's cheeks. I raised my son to understand that family comes first, always. Apparently that lesson didn't take, I observed, turning to Nathan. I came here to discuss divorce proceedings, not to be ambushed by your mother. It's not an ambush, Nathan protested. I just thought having Mom here might help us talk calmly about our options. We don't have options, Nathan. We have a reality. You cheated. I'm pregnant. I'm leaving you. Olivia, please. He moved toward me, his eyes pleading. I know what I did was unforgivable, but we're about to have a baby. Can't we at least try to work through this? For our child's sake? Don't you dare use our baby as a shield, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. You weren't thinking about our child when you were sleeping with Veronica. I didn't know about the baby then. And that makes it better? I interrupted. You were trying to get me pregnant while sleeping with your assistant. What kind of man does that? A man who made a terrible mistake, Margaret interjected, but one who's willing to do whatever it takes to earn back your trust. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. With all due respect, Mrs. Campbell, this isn't your marriage. It's not your decision to make. That's my grandchild you're carrying, she replied, her voice hardening. That makes it very much my concern. Something cold and clarifying settled over me. I looked at Nathan, really looked at him, seeing not the man I had loved and trusted, but the boy who had never fully severed the apron strings, who had brought his mother to fight his battles. I want a divorce, I said clearly. I'll be staying with Megan until I find a new place. You can remain here until the lease ends next month. After that, I don't care where you go. And my child? Margaret demanded. What about my son's rights as a father? Nathan will have whatever rights the court decides are appropriate, I replied evenly. Given the circumstances, I think joint custody is reasonable once the baby is born and a proper visitation schedule can be established. This is insane, Nathan burst out. We're talking about breaking up our family before it's even formed. Can't we at least try counseling? No, I said simply. I don't want to try. I don't want to fix this. I want to move on with my life. Because of your precious career? Margaret asked, disdain evident in her tone. Is that what matters more to you than your marriage? Than giving your child a proper home with two parents? I felt a surge of anger, but kept my voice level. What matters to me is self-respect, honesty, trust, the foundation of a healthy relationship, and, yes, a healthy home for my child. Nathan destroyed that foundation. I'm simply acknowledging the reality he created. I moved toward the stairs. I'm going to pack some more of my things. Nathan, I expect you to have your mother book a return flight. If you want to discuss the divorce like adults, you know how to reach me. If you continue to use your mother or my pregnancy as emotional leverage, all further communication will go through my attorney. I climbed the stairs, ignoring their protests, and entered what had been our bedroom. The bed had been stripped, the sheets presumably burned or discarded. Small mercies. I packed efficiently, taking only what I needed for the next few weeks. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop, important documents. I hesitated over the framed photos of Nathan and me, then left them behind. That life was over. When I came back downstairs, Margaret was gone. I sent her to the hotel, Nathan explained, his voice subdued. You were right. This is between us. Yes, it is, I agreed, placing my suitcase by the door. Have you thought about what you want to do? I want you to come home, he said immediately. I want to be there for you and the baby. I want to make this right. That's not possible, I replied. Some things can't be fixed, Nathan. Trust. Once broken doesn't magically repair itself. So that's it? He ran a hand through his hair, desperation evident in every line of his body. 7 years together? Thrown away because of one mistake? One mistake, I repeated incredulously. You carried on an affair for 4 months. You brought her into our home, into our bed. That's not one mistake. That's hundreds of deliberate choices. I'll do anything, he pleaded. Anything you want. Just tell me there's a chance. I looked at him. This man I had loved, had planned to raise children with, had built a life around, and felt nothing but a dull ache. There's no chance, I said softly. I'm sorry, Nathan. It's over. I picked up my suitcase and walked out the door, not looking back even when I heard what sounded like a sob behind me. As I drove away, I felt a strange lightness. The pain was still there, the betrayal still raw, but alongside it was something unexpected: relief. The decision had been made. The path forward was clear. Difficult, yes, but clear. My phone rang as I pulled onto the highway. "Elena, how did it go?" she asked when I answered. "About as well as could be expected," I replied. "He brought his mother." Elena's laugh was sharp and knowing. "Of course he did. Men like Nathan always run to mommy when they're in trouble." She tried to convince me to stay for the baby's sake. "And what did you tell her?" "That I was leaving for the baby's sake," I said, "among other reasons." "Good girl," Elena approved. "Now I've been thinking, why don't you stay in my guest house until you find a new place? It's just sitting empty, and it would give you some privacy and space to plan your next steps." I hesitated, touched by her generosity but wary of imposing. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. Besides, it will give us a chance to strategize about the Collins proposal. They're still pushing for that meeting next week, and I think we should reconsider our initial offer." And just like that, Elena pulled me back into the world I knew, the world where I was confident and capable. Not the betrayed wife, but the COO of Artemis Technologies, a woman with a future still bright with possibility. "I'll look at the numbers tonight," I promised. "And Elena, thank you." "Don't thank me yet," she warned, a smile in her voice. "Wait until you see how early I start my morning conference calls. The walls in that guest house are thinner than you'd think." I laughed for the first time since the ultrasound, one hand resting protectively on my stomach. "We'll manage," I told her. "We always do." The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. I moved into Elena's guest house, a charming one-bedroom cottage with windows overlooking the Sound. Nathan continued to text and call, alternating between desperate pleas for reconciliation and pragmatic questions about prenatal appointments and divorce proceedings. I answered only the latter, keeping our conversations brief and focused on practical matters. Yes, I had a lawyer drawing up divorce papers. No, I didn't need him to come to my next ultrasound. Yes, I would let him know when I found out the baby's gender. Margaret returned to Chicago after a week, but not before sending me a lengthy email about the importance of family and the negative effects of divorce on children. I deleted it without responding. At work, I threw myself into preparations for the platform launch, grateful for the distraction and for Elena's unwavering support. My pregnancy became public knowledge after my 16th week, when my small bump became impossible to hide in business attire. The reactions were mixed. Most of my colleagues were supportive, offering congratulations and advice. A few seemed uncertain how to respond to the news that I was pregnant and divorcing simultaneously. The board members were professionally polite, but I caught the concerned glances, the whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. They were wondering if I could handle it all: the pregnancy, the divorce, the launch. If I was still a good investment for the company, I set out to prove that I was. I worked longer hours, produced more comprehensive reports, led meetings with a focused intensity that brooked no argument. I scheduled my prenatal appointments for early mornings or late evenings, never missing a minute of work. When morning, sickness hit me in my 5th month. Late, the doctor said, but not uncommon. I powered through meetings with strategically placed trash cans and ginger candies hidden in my pocket. "You don't have to be superwoman," Elena told me one evening, finding me still at my desk well past 9 o'clock. "No one doubts your commitment." "They do, though," I replied, not looking up from my laptop. "Johnson asked me yesterday if I was still planning to return after maternity leave." Elena's eyebrows shot up. "And what did you tell him?" "That I'd be back before he had time to figure out how the coffee machine works." I smiled grimly. "He hasn't asked me to make coffee since." She laughed, perching on the edge of my desk. The divorce papers came through? I nodded. Nathan signed them yesterday. No contest, equitable distribution of assets, joint custody with primary physical custody to me. I placed a protective hand on my now visible bump. It's just us now, officially. How do you feel about that? Relieved, I admitted, and a little terrified. Elena squeezed my shoulder gently. The terrified feeling never quite goes away. It just changes form as they grow. Voice of experience? Voice of observation, she corrected. I may not have children of my own, but I've watched enough friends and family members raise theirs to know that parenting is equal parts joy and terror, regardless of your circumstances. I saved the file I was working on and shut my laptop. I'm house hunting this weekend. The realtor found a few promising properties in Queen Anne, not far from the office. Good. That guest house was never meant for long-term occupation, Elena said. Especially not with a baby on the way. It's been a lifesaver these past months, I protested. I don't know how I would have managed otherwise. You would have found a way, she said confidently. You always do. As I drove back to the guest house that night, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed in just a few months. From married and trying to conceive to pregnant and divorced. From sharing a home with Nathan to living in Elena's guest house. From planning a future together to plotting a path forward alone. Alone, but not lonely. I had Megan, who had appointed herself my unofficial pregnancy coach. I had Elena, whose mentorship had evolved into something closer to friendship. I had my team at Artemis, who looked to me for leadership regardless of my personal circumstances. And I had my baby. A girl I had learned at my 20-week scan. A daughter who would know from the beginning that her mother was strong enough to walk away from a broken marriage and build something better for both of them. As I pulled into Elena's driveway, my phone pinged with a new email. A notification from LinkedIn. Nathan Campbell has viewed your profile. I frowned, wondering what had prompted him to check my professional page. We had settled into an uneasy peace over the past weeks, communicating only about divorce proceedings and occasional updates about the pregnancy. Curious, I opened LinkedIn on my phone, navigating to Nathan's profile. His status had been updated, seeking new opportunities in creative marketing and brand development, so he had lost his job. The firm where he had worked, where he had met Veronica, had let him go. I felt a twinge of something like sympathy, quickly subsumed by a more pragmatic thought. Would this affect his ability to provide child support? I made a mental note to ask my lawyer, then closed the app and headed inside. Nathan's career troubles were his own problem now, not mine. Little did I know that his job search would soon become very much my problem indeed. The morning of my 26th week of pregnancy began like any other. I woke early, reviewed reports, over breakfast, and arrived at the Artemis offices by 7:30. Elena and I had an 8 o'clock meeting with the development team to discuss final testing protocols for the platform launch. I was setting up the conference room when my assistant, Trevor, appeared in the doorway, an odd expression on his face. "Olivia, there's someone here to see you," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "He doesn't have an appointment, but he's quite insistent." "Who is it?" "Nathan Campbell," Trevor replied, watching my reaction closely. "Your, ex-husband," I supplied, surprised but not alarmed. "Did he say what this is about?" "He mentioned something about an important personal matter that couldn't wait," Trevor said. "I told him you were about to go into a meeting, but he said he'd wait as long as necessary." I sighed, glancing at the clock. "Send him to my office. I have exactly 7 minutes before Elena arrives." Trevor nodded and disappeared. I finished setting up the conference room, then made my way to my office, trying to imagine what was so urgent that Nathan would show up at my workplace unannounced. He was standing by the window when I entered. looking out at the Seattle skyline. He turned at the sound of the door, and I was struck by how different he appeared from the last time I'd seen him. Thinner, with dark circles under his eyes and his usually immaculate clothing slightly rumpled. "Olivia," he said, taking a step toward me before stopping himself. His eyes dropped to my pronounced baby bump. You look beautiful." "Thank you," I replied coolly, moving behind my desk without offering my hand. "What's so urgent? That it couldn't wait for a phone call, Nathan?" He cleared his throat, suddenly seeming nervous. "I wanted to tell you in person. I've been let go from Riverside Media." "I know," I said. "I saw your LinkedIn update." "Right." He ran a hand through his hair, a familiar gesture that once I had found endearing. "The thing is, I've been job hunting for weeks, but no one's hiring. The economy's tight, especially in marketing, and with the merger of Keaton and Hayes last month, half the creative directors in the city are looking for work." I glanced at my watch. "I sympathize with your situation, Nathan, but I have a meeting in 3 minutes. Was there something specific you needed from me?" He took a deep breath, as if steeling himself. "I want to apply for the marketing director position at Artemis." Of all the things he might have said, this was the last I expected. "You want a what?" "I saw the job posting yesterday," he explained quickly. "Senior marketing director, overseeing brand development for the new platform launch. It's perfect for my skill set, Olivia. You know that. I've led 2 similar launches, at Riverside, both hugely successful." "Nathan," I said slowly, as if speaking to a child, "you can't seriously expect me to hire my ex-husband." "Why not?" he countered. "This isn't about our personal history. This is business. I'm qualified for the position. Overqualified, actually. And you need someone who can hit the ground running with the launch just months away." "This is inappropriate on so many levels," I began, but was interrupted by a knock on my door. Elena entered without waiting for a response, her eyebrows rising slightly at the sight of Nathan. "Am I interrupting?" "Not at all," I said quickly. "Nathan was just leaving." "Actually," he said, turning to Elena with his most charming smile, "I was hoping to speak with you as well, Dr. Winters, about the marketing director position." Elena's gaze flicked between us, shrewd and assessing. "I see. Perhaps we should reschedule our development meeting, Olivia?" "That won't be necessary," I said firmly. "Nathan was simply informing me of his intention to apply for the position. He can follow the standard application process like any other candidate." "Of course," Nathan agreed smoothly. "But I thought it might be helpful for you to have my resume directly." He produced a folder from his briefcase, holding it out to Elena. "And to answer any questions you might have about my qualifications." Elena accepted the folder with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How thoughtful. I'll be sure to pass this along to our hiring committee." "Thank you," Nathan said. "I appreciate your consideration, especially given the unusual circumstances." "Indeed," Elena replied. "Unusual is one word for it." Nathan turned back to me, his expression softening. "You're looking well, Olivia. Is the baby kicking much these days?" Nathan continued, his eyes still fixed. "On my belly. We're not doing this here," I replied firmly. "If you want updates about the pregnancy, you can text me like we agreed." "Right, of course." He nodded, looking chastened. "I'll see myself out. Thank you both for your time." After Nathan left, Elena turned to me with a raised eyebrow. "Well, that was unexpected." "Completely," I agreed, sinking into my chair. "I had no idea he was planning to apply here." "Are you all right?" she asked, studying my face. "I'm fine. Just surprised." "Do you want me to reject his application immediately? I can have HR send the standard not a good fit email by noon." I considered her offer, tempted to eliminate this potential complication before it went any further. But something held me back. "No," I said finally. Let his application go through the regular process. We're not rejecting qualified candidates because of my personal feelings." Elena looked skeptical. "Olivia, no one would blame you for not wanting to work with your ex-husband, particularly given the circumstances of your separation." "I know," I said, rising from my chair. "But I won't give him or anyone else the satisfaction of saying I let emotions cloud my professional judgment. If he's truly the most qualified candidate, so be it. And if he's not?" I smiled thinly. "Then he'll be rejected on his merits, or lack thereof. Now shall we go meet with the development team?" As we walked to the conference room, Elena gave me a sidelong glance. "You know the final hiring decision for the marketing director position is yours, right? As COO, you have veto power over all senior management hires." "I'm aware," I replied, "which is exactly why I need to be extra careful to ensure the process is completely fair and transparent. Even if it means potentially working alongside the man who betrayed you while you were carrying his child?" I placed a protective hand on my bump, feeling my daughter kick as if responding to the conversation. "Even then, Artemis comes first." The development meeting proceeded as scheduled, but I found my thoughts drifting repeatedly to Nathan's unexpected appearance. What was he playing at? Did he genuinely want the job? Or was this some elaborate scheme to insert himself back into my life? After the meeting, I texted Megan. "You won't believe who showed up at my office this morning." Her reply was immediate. "Spill, Nathan. He's applying for the marketing director position at Artemis." 3 dots appeared as Megan typed, disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, "Is he insane? Apparently desperate. Says he can't find work elsewhere. Tell me you shut that down immediately." I hesitated before responding. "I'm letting his application go through the normal process." Megan's response was a single question. Mark, followed by, "Call me ASAP. Clearly pregnancy has affected your brain." I smiled despite myself, then returned to the quarterly reports I needed to review before my next meeting. Nathan's application would be handled by HR first, then the hiring committee. I wouldn't need to deal with it directly for at least a week, possibly longer. Or so I thought. Late that afternoon, Trevor appeared in my doorway again. "Olivia, HR. Sent over the first batch of marketing director applications for your preliminary review." I frowned. "Already? The posting only went up 2 days ago." "Apparently they've received an unusually high number of applications," Trevor explained, placing a stack of folders on my desk. "Sharon said they're prioritizing candidates with platform launch experience, per your specifications." "Thank you," I said, already dreading what I might find among the applications. Sure enough, Nathan's resume was the third in the stack. I had to admit, objectively speaking, his qualifications were impressive. 7 years at Riverside Media, rising from creative strategist to creative director. Leadership roles in multiple successful product launches. Awards for 2 major advertising campaigns. A glowing reference letter from Riverside's CEO, dated before his termination, I noted. I set his folder aside and continued reviewing the other applications, making notes for the hiring committee. By the end of the day, I had narrowed the first batch down to 8 promising candidates, including Nathan. That evening, as I prepared dinner in the guest house kitchen, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Olivia Campbell," I answered, balancing the phone between my ear and shoulder as I stirred pasta sauce. "Ms. Campbell, this is Margaret Campbell." I nearly dropped the wooden spoon I was holding. "Mrs. Campbell, this is unexpected." "I'm calling." "About Nathan," she said without preamble. "He tells me he's applied for a position at your company." "That's correct," I replied cautiously. "I want to make sure you're going to give his application fair consideration." I turned down the heat under the sauce, sensing this conversation would require my full attention. "With all due respect, Mrs. Campbell, my company's hiring processes are none of your concern." "They are when my son's future is at stake," she insisted. He needs this job, Olivia. Since your separation, he's been struggling. This position would give him a chance to rebuild his life. Nathan's struggles are not my responsibility, I said firmly. And I find it highly inappropriate that you're calling me about this. You're carrying my grandchild, Margaret continued, as if I hadn't spoken. Don't you think that child deserves a father who can provide properly? Who can pay child support and maintain a decent standard of living? My child will have everything she needs, with or without Nathan's financial contribution, I replied, my patience wearing thin. Now, if there's nothing else— Nathan made a mistake, Margaret interrupted. A terrible one, yes. But does he deserve to have his career destroyed because of it? Are you really so vindictive that you'd deny him this opportunity out of spite? Mrs. Campbell, I said, my voice deadly quiet, I am going to say this once, and only once. Nathan's application will be considered fairly, along with all other qualified candidates. His personal relationship to me will not factor into the decision, positively or negatively. Now, I would appreciate it if you would refrain from contacting me about this matter again. Just think about what I've said, she persisted, for the baby's sake, if nothing else. I ended the call without responding, my hands shaking with anger. How dare she? How dare Nathan involve his mother in this situation? I texted him immediately. Your mother just called me about your job application. Never do that again. His response came quickly. I didn't ask her to call. I'm sorry, Olivia. It won't happen again. See that it doesn't. And for the record, involving your mother in our professional interactions is the quickest way to ensure your application goes straight to the rejection pile. Understood. I truly am sorry. I put my phone down and returned to my dinner preparations. My appetite diminished, but my determination strengthened. If this was how Nathan operated, having his mother fight his battles, trying to manipulate me through guilt, then he had no place at Artemis, regardless of his professional qualifications. Next morning, I arrived at the office to find Elena waiting for me, a curious expression on her face. Have you seen this? She asked, handing me a printout of an email. I scanned the document, my eyebrows rising higher with each paragraph. It was a letter from Nathan to Elena, sent late last night, outlining all the reasons why hiring him would benefit Artemis. Complete, with a detailed marketing strategy for the platform launch. He sent this directly to you? I asked, handing the paper back. To me and every member of the board, Elena confirmed. Apparently, he's not content to let the standard hiring process run its course. This is completely inappropriate, I muttered. He's trying to circumvent the system. He's desperate, Elena observed. And desperate people rarely make good decisions. Has the board responded? Not yet, she said. They're waiting for guidance. From us. From you, specifically. Jordan asked me if we should be concerned about potential legal complications, given your personal history. I sighed, rubbing my temple where a headache was beginning to form. There are no legal issues as long as the hiring process remains fair and transparent. Nathan has every right to apply for the position. His application will be evaluated on its merits, just like everyone else's. And his attempt to go directly to the board? An unfortunate lapse in professional judgment, I replied. One that should be noted in his application file. Elena nodded, seemingly satisfied with my response. I've scheduled first-round interviews for next week. The hiring committee wants you to sit in, given the seniority of the position. Of course, I agreed, though internally I was cringing at the thought of interviewing Nathan. One more thing, Elena added, turning back at my door. Marcus Reynolds called this morning. He's heard about our marketing director search and wants to recommend someone from his team at Horizon Digital. Marcus Reynolds was the CEO of one of our main competitors, a brilliant but notoriously difficult man with whom I'd butted heads on several occasions. Why would Marcus recommend one of his own people to us? I asked suspiciously. Apparently, they are downsizing their marketing department following the Stackware acquisition, Elena explained. He says he'd rather see his best people land on their feet with us than lose them to an out-of-state competitor. That's unusually generous of him, I remarked, still skeptical, isn't it? I told him to have his candidate submit an application through the proper channels, but I thought you should know. After Elena left, I sat at my desk pondering this new development. Marcus Reynolds was not known for his generosity or cooperation. If he was recommending someone to us, there had to be an angle I wasn't seeing. Just another complication in what was becoming an increasingly complex hiring process. The rest of the week passed in a blur of meetings, reports, and preparation for the upcoming interviews. Nathan, to his credit, refrained from further inappropriate contact, though I received several more text messages asking about the baby and offering to attend my next ultrasound appointment. I responded politely but briefly, maintaining the professional distance I'd established since our separation. By Friday, HR had narrowed the field to 12 candidates for first-round interviews, including Nathan and Marcus Reynolds' recommendation, a woman named Abigail Chen, whose resume was undeniably impressive. "Olivia?" Trevor interrupted my review of the interview schedule. "There's a delivery for you." He wheeled in a large basket overflowing with baby items, soft blankets, tiny clothes, stuffed animals, and a variety of infant care products. A card was attached to the handle. "Who is it from?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "The pie." "Card just says, 'For my daughter. Can't wait to meet her.'" Trevor replied, reading from the small envelope. "Nathan." "Of course. Please have someone take this to the charity collection in the lobby," I instructed. "They distribute baby items to shelters for women and children." Trevor looked uncertain. "Are you sure? It looks expensive." "I'm sure," I said firmly. "And, Trevor, if any more deliveries arrive from Mr. Campbell, please redirect them immediately to charity without bringing them to my attention." "Understood." He nodded, wheeling the basket back out. I texted Nathan, "Please refrain from sending gifts to my workplace. If you want to provide for our daughter, we can discuss that after she's born." His reply was immediate. "I was just trying. To show I care about the baby, there are more appropriate ways to do that." "Like what?" "You won't let me come to appointments. You redirect my gifts. You barely respond to my texts. How am I supposed to be involved?" I considered ignoring the message, but decided a clear boundary was necessary. We agreed on joint custody with a visitation schedule to be determined after birth. Until then, periodic updates about the pregnancy are all that's required. Please respect my professional space. There was a long pause before his next message appeared. "I'm sorry. You're right. No more gifts to the office." I set my phone aside, feeling drained by even this brief interaction. Every exchange with Nathan seemed to require emotional energy I couldn't spare, not with the platform launch looming and my pregnancy advancing into the 3rd trimester. The weekend brought no respite. I worked from the guest house, finalizing interview questions and reviewing candidate materials. On Sunday evening, Megan came over with takeout and forced me to take a break. "You look exhausted," she observed bluntly, setting out containers of Thai food on the small dining table. "Are you sleeping at all?" "The baby thinks nighttime is the perfect opportunity to practice her gymnastics routine," I replied, rubbing my lower back where an ache had been steadily building all day. "And my brain won't shut off. Between the launch and this marketing, director search, and Nathan," Megan added, serving me a generous portion of pad thai. "And Nathan," I agreed with a sigh. "Have you considered just rejecting his application outright? No one would blame you." "Elena offered the same solution," I said, picking at my food. "But that would be letting personal feelings influence a business decision. I've worked too hard to establish myself as a rational, objective leader to throw it away now." "So you're going to interview your cheating ex-husband for a senior position at your company?" Megan shook her head. "That's going to be awkward. Excruciatingly I admitted, but I can handle it. Megan studied me over her glass of water. You know what I think? I think you're being too fair. Nathan doesn't deserve this consideration from you, not after what he did. This isn't about what Nathan deserves, I replied. It's about what's best for Artemis. If he truly is the most qualified candidate, and I'm not saying he is, then my personal feelings can't be the deciding factor. Even if it means seeing him every day, working closely with him on the platform launch, having him in meetings where you're discussing your pregnancy accommodation needs? I winced at the scenarios she was painting. If it comes to that, I'll establish clear professional boundaries. Like he respected your clear marital boundaries? Megan asked pointedly. That's different, I protested. Is it? Nathan has already shown he doesn't respect boundaries. He showed up at your office unannounced. He sent his mother to intervene. He bypassed normal channels to contact the board directly. He sent a baby gift to your workplace after you explicitly told him to keep your professional and personal lives separate. She counted off each transgression on her fingers. What makes you think he'll suddenly start respecting boundaries if you hire him? I had no good answer for that. Monday morning arrived with a fresh complication. As I entered the office, Trevor handed me a message slip. Veronica Taylor called for you, he said, watching my reaction carefully. I stared at the slip of paper, the name sending a jolt through me. Nathan's former assistant? She didn't say what it was regarding, Trevor continued, but she sounded anxious. Said it was important that she speak with you personally. What could Veronica possibly want? We had never spoken, not even during the divorce proceedings. Nathan had claimed he'd fired her immediately after I discovered their affair, and I had neither known nor cared whether that was true. If she calls again, put her through, I decided, curiosity overcoming my initial reluctance. An hour later, Trevor buzzed my intercom. Olivia, Veronica Taylor is on line 1. I took a deep breath and picked up the phone. This is Olivia Campbell, Ms. Campbell, a nervous female voice responded. Thank you for taking my call. I wasn't sure you would. What can I do for you, Ms. Taylor? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. I understand that Nathan, Mr. Campbell, has applied for a position at your company, she began. I'm not at liberty to discuss our hiring processes with outside parties, I replied automatically. I know, and I wouldn't normally call, but... She hesitated. There are things you should know before you make any decisions. Things about why Nathan was really let go from Riverside. My interest was piqued, despite myself. Go on. Not over the phone, she said quickly. Could we meet? In person? I have documentation you should see. Every instinct told me this was a bad idea, that meeting with my ex-husband's former mistress could only complicate an already complex situation. And yet, if there was information about Nathan that might be relevant to his application, didn't. I have a responsibility to consider it? Ms. Taylor, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not comfortable meeting privately given our history. I understand, she said, sounding defeated. I just thought you should know that Nathan's reference letter from Riverside's CEO is misleading. He wasn't let go because of downsizing or the economic climate. There were other issues, serious ones, that aren't reflected in his application materials. If you have documentation relevant to Mr. Campbell's professional history, you're welcome to send it to our HR department, I told her, giving her the appropriate email address. Thank you, she said. I'll do that. And Ms. Campbell, I'm truly sorry for the pain I caused you. It's no excuse, but Nathan told me you were separated when we began our relationship. I didn't know about the pregnancy until after everything came out. I gripped the phone tighter, her words reopening, wounds I thought had begun to heal. Is there anything else, Ms. Taylor? No, she said softly. Thank you for your time. After hanging up, I sat at my desk trying to process this unexpected interaction. Was Veronica telling the truth about Nathan lying to her? About there being more to his termination than economic factors? Or was this some elaborate attempt at redemption on her part? Or worse, revenge against Nathan for ending their relationship? I had no way of knowing, but I found myself hoping that whatever documentation she sent would provide clear answers. The first round of marketing director interviews began the next day. I sat in on each one along with Elena and 2 members of the hiring committee. The candidates were mostly impressive, experienced marketing professionals eager to join Artemis and be part of our platform launch. Nathan's interview was scheduled for Thursday afternoon, the last of the first round. I spent the morning in a strategic planning session, trying to focus on revenue projections and market penetration estimates, rather than the upcoming confrontation. At precisely 2 o'clock, Trevor escorted Nathan into the conference room where the interviews were being conducted. He was impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that I recognized. I had helped him choose it last year for an industry award ceremony. His hair was freshly cut, his shoes polished to a high shine. He looked every inch the successful executive, except for the tension visible around his eyes. "Good afternoon," Elena greeted him, professional and cool. "Please have a seat, Mr. Campbell." Nathan sat across from us, his gaze briefly meeting mine before focusing on Elena. "Thank you for this opportunity, Dr. Winters. I appreciate the committee's consideration of my application." The interview proceeded according to the standard format we had established. Elena asked about his experience with platform launches. Richard from the hiring committee questioned his approach to integrated marketing campaigns. Susan from the board inquired about his strategic vision for Artemis's brand evolution. Nathan answered each question articulately, drawing on his extensive experience and demonstrating a clear understanding of our company's position in the market. He was good, very good, at presenting himself as the ideal candidate. Then it was my turn. "Mr. Campbell," I began, my voice steady and professional. "Your application mentions that you left Riverside Media due to organizational restructuring. Could you elaborate on the circumstances of your departure?" A flicker of unease crossed his face before he composed himself. Of course, Riverside underwent significant changes following their acquisition by GlobeNet last quarter. Several senior positions were eliminated as part of the consolidation process, including mine. "And this restructuring was the sole reason for your termination?" Nathan hesitated, almost imperceptibly. "Yes, that was the primary factor." I made a note on my tablet, then continued. "Our marketing director will need to work closely with all department heads, including the COO. Given our prior personal relationship, how would you ensure that professional boundaries are maintained?" "I would maintain strict professionalism at all times," he replied promptly. "Our personal history would remain entirely separate from our professional interactions. I'm committed to making this work, Ms. Campbell, for the benefit of Artemis and the success of the platform launch. And if conflicts arose, I would defer to established corporate protocols for conflict resolution," he said smoothly. "My priority would be the company's success, not personal considerations." I nodded, making another note. "Thank you for your candor." The rest of the interview continued without incident. Nathan was polished, prepared, and persuasive, exactly as I would have expected. When it concluded, Elena thanked him for his time and Trevor appeared to escort him out. At the door, Nathan turned back. "Thank you all for your consideration. I look forward to the possibility of joining the Artemis team." His gaze lingered on me for a moment before he followed Trevor out. After he left, Elena turned to me. "Well, what did you think?" "Professionally speaking, he's qualified," I acknowledged. "His experience with platform launches is extensive, and his strategic approach aligns with our goals." "But," Richard prompted, "but I have concerns about his explanation regarding his departure from Riverside," I said carefully. "I received information suggesting there may have been other factors involved." "What kind of factors?" Susan asked. I'm waiting for documentation, I explained. Once I've reviewed it, I'll share any relevant findings with the committee. The hiring committee agreed to delay their decision until all the information was available. As we concluded the meeting, Elena held me back with a light touch on my arm. "Are you all right?" she asked when we were alone. That couldn't have been easy. "I'm fine," I assured her, though in truth, the interview had left me feeling drained and unsettled. "Just ready for this process to be over." "It will be soon," she promised. "We'll make our decision next week, and then you can focus entirely on the launch and on preparing for your daughter's arrival." I smiled weakly, one hand moving to my belly where my daughter was performing her usual acrobatics. That sounds wonderful. The next morning, an email from Veronica Taylor arrived in my inbox, forwarded from HR with a note indicating they had verified its authenticity. The subject line read simply, "Documentation re. Nathan Campbell, confidential." I opened the attachment, a PDF containing several internal Riverside Media documents, including an HR investigation report, emails between Nathan and senior management, and a final termination letter. As I read through the materials, a very different picture of Nathan's departure from Riverside emerged than the one he had presented. In his interview, Nathan hadn't been let go because of restructuring. He had been terminated for cause, specifically for creating a hostile work environment through inappropriate relationships with subordinates. Plural, I noted with a fresh wave of. According to the termination letter, Nathan hadn't just had an affair with Veronica. There had been at least 2 other inappropriate relationships with junior staff members over the past 18 months. Complaints had been filed, warnings had been issued. And finally, when the pattern continued, he had been fired. The investigation report detailed how Nathan had used his position of power to pursue these relationships, offering promotions and favorable assignments to women who responded to his advances. One email thread showed him discussing with another executive how to manage the fallout when a young graphic designer threatened to report him to HR. Most damning of all was a series of text messages between Nathan and Riverside's CEO, where Nathan joked about keeping it in the family, and the CEO warned him that his behavior was becoming a liability. I sat back in my chair, feeling a mixture of disgust and vindication. Nathan hadn't just betrayed me personally. He had engaged in a pattern of inappropriate workplace behavior that undermined his professional credibility. His affair with Veronica hadn't been a one-time mistake, as he'd claimed, but part of a disturbing pattern, and he had lied directly to our hiring committee when asked about the circumstances of his departure. I forwarded the documentation to Elena with a brief note. "We need to discuss this immediately." Her response came within minutes. "My office, now." I gathered my tablet and headed to Elena's corner office, my mind racing with implications. Nathan's deception changed everything. It wasn't just about our personal history anymore. It was about his professional ethics and honesty, or lack thereof. Elena looked up from her computer as I entered, her expression grim. "I've just finished reviewing the documents. This is serious, Olivia." "Extremely," I agreed, closing the door behind me. He lied during his interview, directly and unequivocally. "Not just about his termination," Elena noted, scrolling through the files on her screen. "These documents suggest a pattern of behavior that would be completely unacceptable at Artemis. We have a zero-tolerance policy for power-based harassment," I confirmed. "It's in our employment contract and employee handbook, which means even if we hadn't discovered this now, we'd likely be firing him within months if he continued this behavior here." Elena leaned back in her chair, studying me. "How do you want to handle this?" "Professionally," I replied without hesitation. "We thank him for his interest, but inform him that we've decided to pursue other candidates. No need to specify why. And if he presses for an explanation, then we can reference the discrepancy between his stated reason for leaving Riverside and the documentation we've received." I paused, considering. Though I'd prefer to keep this as clean and simple as possible. The last thing we need is Nathan causing a scene, or worse, filing some kind of discrimination claim. Agreed. Elena nodded. I'll have HR prepare the standard rejection letter. We'll send it out today, along with rejections for 3 other candidates we've decided not to advance. Thank you, I said, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. The complication of potentially working with Nathan was eliminated, not because of our personal history, but because of his professional misconduct and dishonesty. One more thing, Elena added as I turned to leave. You should know that Abigail Chen, the candidate Marcus Reynolds recommended, is extremely impressive. She's advanced to the 2nd round, and based on her first interview, she's currently our leading candidate. That's surprising, I admitted. I'm still not sure why. Marcus would recommend someone so qualified to a competitor. Perhaps her departure from Horizon wasn't entirely voluntary, Elena suggested. We should look into that before making any decisions? I nodded, making a mental note to have Trevor discreetly investigate Abigail's history with Horizon Digital. Back. In my office, I found a text message waiting on my phone. Just finished a doctor's appointment. Everything looking good for August 15th delivery date. Thought you'd want to know. Nathan, I'd almost forgotten that today was my scheduled 32-week checkup. We had originally agreed that I would keep him updated on significant developments, though. He hadn't been invited to attend the appointments. I typed a brief response. Thanks for the update. Everything is progressing normally. His reply came quickly. Any word on the marketing director position? The committee seemed impressed with my interview. I set my phone down without responding. Let HR's form letter do the talking. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and preparation for the platform launch. By evening, I was exhausted, my back aching from sitting through 3 consecutive product development meetings. As I prepared to leave, Trevor appeared with a concerned expression. Nathan Campbell is in the lobby, he reported. He's demanding to speak with you. Says it's urgent. I sighed, glancing at the clock. Nearly 7. Most of the staff had already left for the day. Did he say what it's about? He received the rejection letter from HR this afternoon, Trevor explained. He's not taking it well. Of course he isn't, I muttered. Call security and have them escort him out. I'm not available. He says he won't leave until he speaks. With you, Trevor persisted. Security is reluctant to physically remove him given his connection to you. I closed my eyes briefly, suppressing a surge of frustration. Even now, 7 months pregnant and legally divorced, I was still dealing with the fallout from Nathan's actions. Fine, I decided. Have security bring him to conference room C. I'll speak with him for 5 minutes. No longer. Trevor nodded and hurried away to relay my instructions. I took a moment to compose myself, then gathered my things and headed to the small conference room on the executive floor. Nathan was already there when I arrived, pacing the length of the room like a caged animal. He looked disheveled, his perfect interview appearance replaced by rumpled clothing and wild eyes. You rejected my application, he said without preamble, stopping his pacing to face me. The hiring committee decided to pursue other candidates, I corrected, remaining near the door. It's a competitive position. Bullshit, he spat. This is personal. You're punishing me for what happened between us. Nathan, I said evenly, our personal history had nothing to do with the committee's decision. Now, I've agreed to give you 5 minutes. The clock is ticking. I need this job, Olivia, he said, his tone shifting from anger to desperation. I've been rejected by every major firm in Seattle. No one will hire me. That's unfortunate, but it's not Artemis's responsibility to solve your employment problems. It's your fault, he exploded, taking a step toward me. You ruined my reputation. You told people about the affair, didn't you? Called my contacts? Blacklisted me? I stared at him, incredulous. I did no such thing. I've never discussed our personal situation with anyone in the industry. Then why? He demanded. Why won't anyone hire me? Perhaps because of the real reason Riverside terminated your employment, I suggested quietly. The reason you lied about in your interview. He froze, color draining from his face. What are you talking about? We received documentation about your pattern of inappropriate relationships with subordinates at Riverside, I explained, watching his expression carefully. The multiple complaints, the warnings, the final termination for cause. Veronica, he whispered, realization dawning. She sent you the records. It doesn't matter who provided the information, I replied. What matters is that you lied during your interview. Artemis doesn't hire people who mislead us during the application process. Those complaints were exaggerated, Nathan protested. Office politics, jealous colleagues trying to undermine me. 3 separate complaints from 3 different women, all documenting similar behavior, I countered. Plus corroborating emails and text messages. That's not office politics, Nathan. That's a pattern of misconduct. He ran his hands through his hair, his desperation palpable. Okay, I made mistakes. I admit that. But don't I deserve a chance to redeem myself? To be a better man, a better father to our daughter? Your chances for personal redemption are entirely separate from Artemis's hiring decisions, I said firmly. And using our child as emotional leverage, again, only reinforces that you're not right for this company. What am I supposed to do? He asked, his voice breaking. No one will hire me. I can't make rent. I can't pay child support. I'm sleeping on my mother's couch, for God's sake. Despite everything, I felt a twinge of sympathy. Nathan had created this situation through his own actions, but his desperation was real. Have you considered looking outside Seattle? I suggested. Or taking a position below director level until you can rebuild your reputation? I've tried, he said miserably. I've applied for junior positions, contract work, everything. As soon as they check my references or Google my name, the offers disappear. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I was, despite everything. But I can't help you, Nathan, not professionally. Then help me personally, he pleaded. As the mother of my child, loan me enough to get through the next few months. I'll pay you back, I swear. I shook my head. That's not appropriate. We're divorced. Our only connection now is our daughter, and she hasn't even been born yet. So you're just going to let me crash and burn? He asked bitterly. After 7 years together, that's it? No compassion, no help, nothing? You destroyed our marriage, I reminded him, my patience wearing thin. You lied to me, to your employers, to the hiring committee. Your current situation is the consequence of your own actions, Nathan, not mine. Security appeared in the doorway, summoned by Trevor, who must have been monitoring the situation. Ms. Campbell, is everything all right? The guard asked, eyeing Nathan warily. Everything's fine, I assured him. Mr. Campbell was just leaving. Nathan looked from me to the security guard, then back to me. For a moment, I thought he might argue further, but instead, his shoulders slumped in defeat. This isn't over, Olivia, he said quietly as he moved toward the door. We're connected for life through our daughter. You can't just write me off. I'm not writing you off as her father, I clarified. I'm rejecting you as a potential employee. There's a difference. He left without another word, the security guard following close behind. I sank into a conference room chair, suddenly exhausted. Trevor appeared a moment later. Are you okay? Should I call you a car? I'm fine, I assured him, though my back was aching fiercely. Just tired. I'll head home in a few minutes. But as I gathered my things to leave, a sharp pain lanced through my abdomen, causing me to gasp, and clutch the edge of the table. Olivia? Trevor was at my side immediately, concern written across his face. I'm okay, I said automatically. though another pain followed close behind the first. Just Braxton Hicks contractions. Practice contractions, I explained, seeing his confusion. They're normal at this stage. Should I call someone? Doctor. I checked my watch, timing the next contraction when it came. 5 minutes apart. Too regular for Braxton Hicks. Actually, I said, trying to keep my voice calm, I think you should call an ambulance. And Elena. These might be real contractions. Trevor's eyes widened, but to his credit, he remained composed as he pulled out his phone. Ambulance first, then Elena. Sit down and try to breathe normally. I did as he suggested, focusing on slow, deep breaths as another contraction gripped me. This was too early. I was barely 32 weeks along. The baby wasn't due for another 2 months. By the time the paramedics arrived, the contractions were coming every 4 minutes. Elena arrived just as they were loading me onto a gurney. I'm coming with you, she declared, brushing aside the paramedics. Objection. I'm her emergency contact and medical proxy. In the ambulance, as monitors were attached and an IV started, I realized with a jolt of clarity that I needed to contact Nathan. Whatever our differences, this was his child too. Elena? I gasped between contractions. My phone! Call Nathan! She retrieved my phone from my purse, finding Nathan's number in my contacts. I could hear only her side of the conversation as another contraction demanded my full attention. Nathan, this is Elena Winters. Yes, Olivia's boss. She's in labor. We're en route to Northwest Hospital. No, it's too early. 32 weeks. Yes, I understand. She asked me to call you. I'll update you when we know more. She ended the call and took my hand. He's on his way to the hospital. I nodded, unable to speak as the strongest contraction yet washed over me. The paramedic checked the monitors, his expression concerned. Blood. Pressure's rising, he reported to his partner. Fetal heart rate showing some distress. ETA? 3 minutes, the driver replied. They're ready for her. Everything became a blur after that. The emergency room, the obstetrics team, the urgent consultations, the diagnosis, preeclampsia, a dangerous pregnancy complication characterized by high blood pressure and potential organ damage. Left untreated, it could be life-threatening for both mother and baby. We need to deliver immediately, the obstetrician informed me, her expression grave. Your blood pressure is dangerously high, and the baby is showing signs of distress. But it's too early, I protested weakly, another contraction stealing my breath. We'll take every precaution, she assured me. At 32 weeks, her lungs are developed enough that with proper NICU care, her chances are excellent. But we can't wait. The risks of keeping her inside are now greater than the risks of premature birth. I nodded my understanding, too exhausted and frightened to argue further. They prepared me for an emergency C-section, the anesthesiologist explaining the procedure as nurses bustled around preparing equipment. Is there someone you want in the operating room with you? A nurse asked as they readied to move me. Elena, I said immediately, looking for her familiar face among the medical personnel. I'm right here, Elena assured me, appearing at my side in hospital-provided scrubs. I'm not going anywhere. And I hesitated, torn between my personal feelings and what felt right. Is Nathan here yet? He's in the waiting room, Elena confirmed. Do you want him instead? I closed my eyes briefly, making a decision. No, I want you. But please make sure someone keeps him updated. He should know when his daughter is born. Elena squeezed my hand. I'll make sure he's informed every step of the way. The operating room was bright and cold. I shivered as they transferred me to the narrow table, the spinal block already taking effect, numbing my lower body. Elena sat near my head, her calm presence anchoring me as the doctors worked behind the blue surgical drape. Talk to me, I whispered, needing distraction from the pressure and tugging sensations I could feel despite the anesthesia. Tell me about the second round of interviews. Elena smiled, understanding exactly what I needed. Abigail Chen is even more impressive in person than on paper, she began, her voice steady and reassuring. She presented a comprehensive marketing strategy for the platform launch that anticipated questions we hadn't even considered yet. I focused on her words, clinging to this small piece of normalcy as the medical team worked to deliver my daughter. 8 weeks ahead of schedule. She has innovative ideas about reaching new market segments, Elena continued. And her presentation on, "Here she comes," the obstetrician announced, interrupting Elena's deliberate distraction. "One more moment, and you'll meet your daughter." There was a flurry of activity, and then, unbelievably, a thin, outraged cry filled the operating room. "She's breathing on her own," the doctor reported, her voice reflecting pleased surprise. "Good strong lungs for 32 weeks. Do you want to see her before we take her to the NICU?" a nurse asked, approaching with a tiny bundle wrapped in a hospital blanket. I nodded, tears streaming down my face as they lowered my daughter beside me. She was impossibly small, her face red and scrunched in displeasure, a wisp of dark hair plastered to her head, and she was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. "Hello, little one," I whispered, unable to touch her with my arms strapped down for the surgery. "I'm your mom." "She's beautiful, Olivia," Elena said softly, her own eyes suspiciously bright. "Perfect. We need to get her to the NICU now," the nurse said apologetically. "The neonatologist wants to start assessments right away." "Go with her," I urged Elena. "Don't let her be alone." "Are you sure?" Elena asked, hesitant to leave me. "I'm in good hands here," I assured her, glancing at the medical team still working to complete my surgery. "She needs someone with her. And let Nathan see her if he wants to, after they've got her settled." Elena nodded, following the nurses as they whisked my daughter away to the neonatal intensive care unit. I lay back, feeling oddly calm despite the circumstances. My daughter was here. She was breathing on her own. She had the best medical care available. Everything else, Nathan, the divorce, work, seemed suddenly less important. The next few hours passed in a haze of recovery room monitoring, pain medication, and worried consultations. My blood pressure remained elevated, requiring additional medication and close observation. I drifted in and out of sleep, waking fully when Elena returned to my room. "How is she?" I asked immediately, struggling to sit up despite the pain from my incision. "She's doing remarkably well," Elena reported, helping me adjust the bed to a more comfortable position. 4 pounds, 3 ounces. All her initial assessments are positive. They have her on supplemental oxygen as a precaution, but she's breathing primarily on her own. Relief washed over me. "When can I see her?" "They're setting up a wheelchair transport as soon as the doctor clears you," Elena said. "Probably in the next hour or so." I relaxed slightly, then asked the question that had been hovering in the back of my mind. "And Nathan?" "He's seen her," Elena confirmed. "He's been in the waiting room most of the time, but the nurses allowed him a brief visit to the NICU. She hesitated. "He was quite emotional." I nodded, unsurprised. Whatever Nathan's faults, and they were numerous, I had never doubted that he wanted this child. "Has he asked to see me?" "Yes," Elena admitted. "But I told him that would be up to you when you're feeling stronger." I considered this. Part of me wanted to maintain the distance I'd established since our separation, but another part acknowledged that we now shared a child, a tiny, vulnerable daughter who needed both her parents to cooperate for her sake. "I'll see him tomorrow," I decided. "After I've had a chance to visit the NICU myself, we need to discuss what happens next." Elena nodded, accepting my decision without comment. "You should rest now," she advised. "The NICU nurses said they'd send updates every hour, and I've arranged for my assistant to bring some of your things from the guest house tomorrow morning." "Thank you," I said, reaching for her hand. For everything. I don't know what I would have done without you today. That's what friends are for, she replied simply, squeezing my hand before releasing it. Now rest. Your daughter needs you strong. I must have dozed off again, because the next thing I knew, a nurse was gently waking me. Ms. Campbell, your doctor has cleared you for a short visit to the NICU. Would you like to see your daughter now? Yes, I said immediately, fully awake despite the medication and exhaustion. Please. The wheelchair ride to the NICU seemed interminable, though. It was only one floor up from my recovery room. The nurse pushed me through double doors into a quiet, dimly lit room filled with incubators and monitoring equipment. She guided me to a station near the back, where a tiny plastic enclosure held an even tinier occupant. Here she is, the nurse said softly. Baby girl Campbell. I leaned forward, drinking in the sight of my daughter. She was so small, her skin nearly translucent, with tubes and wires connecting her to various monitors. A knitted cap covered her head, and her miniature chest rose and fell with reassuring regularity. Can I touch her? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Of course, the nurse encouraged, showing me how to reach through the portholes in the side of the incubator. Skin-to-skin contact is extremely beneficial for premature babies. It helps regulate their temperature, heart rate, and breathing. I slipped my hand into the incubator, gently touching my daughter's impossibly small hand. To my amazement and delight, her fingers reflexively curled around mine, holding on with surprising strength. Hello, little fighter, I murmured, tears spilling down my cheeks. You're doing so well. Keep it up. Have you decided on a name? The nurse asked, checking the monitors. I hadn't, not definitively. Nathan and I had discussed names when we were still together, but after the separation, I had put off making a final decision. Looking at her now, though, one name felt absolutely right. Sophia, I said softly. Sophia Elena Campbell. The nurse smiled. That's beautiful. I'll update her records. I sat with Sophia for nearly an hour, talking to her softly, stroking her miniature fingers and arms, memorizing every perfect detail of her face. The NICU doctor came by to explain her condition and prognosis, extremely positive for a 32-week preemie, though she would likely remain in the NICU for at least a month, possibly longer. She's a fighter, he assured me. All her vital signs are strong and she's responding well to treatment. You should be very proud. I am, I said, unable to take my eyes off her. When can I hold her? Possibly tomorrow if her condition remains stable, he replied. We'll try some kangaroo care, holding her against your bare chest. It's tremendously beneficial for her development. Eventually, the nurse insisted I return to my room to rest. My body was reminding me forcefully that I had just undergone major surgery, the incision pain breaking through the medication as I reluctantly allowed them to wheel me back to my room. Elena was waiting there, along with Megan, who rushed to embrace me as soon as the nurse helped me back into bed. She's beautiful, Megan declared, showing me the photos Elena had shared with her permission. Absolutely perfect. She is, I agreed, exhaustion and joy warring within me. They say she's doing well, better than expected for her gestational age. Of course she is, Megan said confidently. She's your daughter. Determination is in her DNA. I smiled weakly, the events of the day finally catching up with me. I named her Sophia, I told them. Sophia Elena. Elena's eyes widened in surprise. Elena? After the strongest woman I know, I confirmed. The woman who showed me what strength truly looks like. I hope Sophia grows up with even a fraction of your courage and wisdom. Elena blinked rapidly, clearly moved. I'm honored, Olivia. Truly. Now both of you need to go home and get some rest, I insisted, seeing the exhaustion in their faces. I'm going to sleep, and you should too. Tomorrow's going to be another long day. After extracting promises that they would call immediately if anything changed with Sophia, both women reluctantly departed. I lay back against the pillows, my hand resting protectively over my now empty abdomen, feeling oddly bereft despite the joy of meeting my daughter. Nothing had gone as planned. Not my marriage, not my pregnancy, not Sophia's birth. And yet, somehow, it felt right. Sophia had arrived exactly when she needed to, in her own time and on her own terms, already asserting her independence, just like her mother. As I drifted toward sleep, my thoughts turned unexpectedly to Nathan. Tomorrow, we would need to have a difficult conversation about co-parenting a premature infant, about visitation schedules and medical decisions, about moving forward as Sophia's parents, if not as partners. The thought should have been daunting, but instead, I felt oddly calm. If today had taught me anything, it was that life rarely followed the expected path. The key was not to control every variable, an impossible task, but to adapt to changing circumstances with grace and determination. And determination was something I had in abundance. Morning brought a flurry of medical activity, vital sign checks, medication adjustments, a visit from my obstetrician to examine my incision. My blood pressure was improving, though still elevated enough to warrant concern. "We'll need to monitor you for at least another 2 to 3 days, the doctor explained. Preeclampsia doesn't magically resolve after delivery. There's still risk of complications. But I can visit the NICU? Short visits, yes, she confirmed. As long as your blood pressure remains stable, the nursing staff will coordinate. After she left, a different nurse entered with a breakfast tray and a message. "Nathan Campbell is asking to see you. He says he'll wait until you're ready." I took a deep breath, mentally preparing myself for what would inevitably be a difficult conversation. "Please tell him he can come by at 10, and I'd like to visit the NICU before then, if possible." The visit to Sophia was both heartbreaking and joyful. She was doing well, exceeding expectations, according to the neonatologist, but still so fragile, so dependent on the medical technology surrounding her. I was able to hold her briefly, her tiny body nestled against my chest in the kangaroo care position the doctor had mentioned. The feeling was indescribable, her miniature heartbeat against mine, her breath warm on my skin. I talked to her the entire time, telling her how brave she was, how proud I was of her, how much I loved her. "Your daddy's coming to visit me later," I told her softly. "We're going to figure out how to be the best parents we can be for you, even though we're not together anymore. It might be a little complicated sometimes, but one thing will never change. We both love you more than anything in the world." Whether it was my imagination or not, I felt her relax against me, as if understanding and accepting my words. All too soon, the nurse informed me it was time to return Sophia to her incubator. I reluctantly allowed them to take her, promising to return that afternoon. Then it was back to my room to prepare for Nathan's visit. I was sitting up in bed, my hair brushed and a hospital robe over my gown, when he knocked tentatively on the door at exactly 10 o'clock. "Come in," I called, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. Nathan entered cautiously, looking as exhausted as I felt. His eyes were red-rimmed, his clothing wrinkled, his hair disheveled. He carried a small gift bag and what appeared to be a bouquet of flowers wrapped in tissue paper. "Olivia," he said, his voice hoarse. "How are you feeling?" "As well as can. Be expected," I replied truthfully. "Still sore from the C-section, and they're monitoring my blood pressure." He nodded, hovering awkwardly near the door. "Can I gestured to the chair beside the bed. "Please sit." He did so, placing the gift bag on the bedside table. "These are for you," he said, offering the bouquet. Not flowers, I realized, but a collection of chocolate bars arranged like a floral display. "I remembered how much you craved chocolate during the pregnancy. Despite everything, I found myself touched by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. "Thank you," I said, accepting the unusual bouquet. "That was kind of you to remember. And this," he continued, indicating the gift bag, "is for Sophia. Just a small stuffed animal for when she's able to have it in her incubator." I nodded. My thanks. An uncomfortable silence falling between us. How had we come to this? Two people who had once shared everything, now struggling to make small talk in a hospital room. "She's beautiful," Nathan said finally, his voice catching. "Perfect. The nurses let me see her last night." "Yes, she is," I agreed. "They say she's doing exceptionally well for 32 weeks. "She's strong," he said with unmistakable pride. "Like her mother." I met his gaze directly. "Nathan, we need to talk about what happens next. For Sophia's sake, we need to establish some ground rules for co-parenting." He nodded, his expression serious. "I agree. I want to be involved in her life, Olivia. Fully involved, not just weekend visits and holidays." "I never intended to keep you from her," I assured him. "The divorce agreement stipulates joint custody, and I stand by that. But given her premature birth and NICU stay, we need to be especially careful about coordination and consistency." "Of course," he agreed immediately. "Whatever the doctors recommend, whatever she needs." I studied him carefully, looking for signs of the manipulative behavior he'd displayed since our separation. But all I saw was genuine concern for our daughter. Perhaps the one pure, uncomplicated emotion he was capable of feeling. "The NICU nurses suggested we create a visitation schedule," I explained. "So Sophia always has someone with her, but we're not overwhelming her with too many people at once. I thought perhaps you could come in the mornings and I'll visit in the afternoons and evenings." "That sounds reasonable," he agreed. "And once she's released, they mentioned it could be a month or more. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it," I said, unwilling to commit to arrangements that might change based on Sophia's medical needs. "For now, let's focus on getting her strong enough to come home." Nathan nodded, then hesitated before asking, "You named her Sophia?" "Sophia Elena Campbell," I confirmed. "I hope that's okay. I know we had discussed other names, but—" "It's perfect," he interrupted. "Beautiful. It suits her." Another silence fell, this one less strained than before. We were finding our way to a new normal, not as husband and wife, but as Sophia's parents. It wouldn't be easy, but for her sake, we would make it work. "There's one more thing," Nathan said finally, his expression growing serious. "About the job at Artemis." I stiffened, my guard immediately rising. "That matter is closed, Nathan. The hiring committee made their decision." "I know," he said quickly. "And I understand why. I lied in the interview and that was unacceptable. He sighed deeply. "I wanted to apologize for putting you in that position, for trying to use our personal connection to influence a professional decision. It was inappropriate and unfair to you." I blinked, surprised by what seemed like genuine contrition. "Thank you for saying that. I've been doing a lot of thinking, since yesterday," he continued, "about the kind of father I want to be for Sophia, the kind of example I want to set. And I realized I've been going about everything all wrong." "How so?" I asked cautiously, still wary of manipulation. "I've been focused on myself, my career, my reputation, my needs, not on what's best for you or for our daughter." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I'm going to do better, Olivia. I'm looking at positions outside Seattle, willing to start over at a lower level if necessary. I'm seeing a therapist to work through my issues with women and power dynamics." I waited, expecting him to follow these declarations with some kind of request or demand. But none came. "I hope you can forgive me someday," he said simply. "Not so we can reconcile. I understand that ship has sailed, but so we can be good co-parents to Sophia. She deserves that from both of us." For the first time since discovering his affair, I felt a glimmer of respect for Nathan. Not for the man he had been, but for the father he was trying to become. "One day at a time," I said, neither promising forgiveness nor ruling it out. "For now, let's focus on Sophia." He nodded, accepting this limited olive branch. "I should go and let you rest. Is it all right if I visit Sophia again this afternoon?" "Of course," I agreed. "Remember to ask the nurses about the kangaroo care," they mentioned. "Skin-to-skin contact is apparently very beneficial for preemies." "I will," he promised, standing to leave. At the door, he paused. "Congratulations, Olivia. She really is a miracle." I watched him go, a complex mix of emotions swirling within me. The anger and betrayal were still there, but alongside them was something new, a cautious hope that perhaps for Sophia's sake, we might eventually find our way to a respectful co-parenting relationship. As the door closed behind Nathan, my phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "How did it go with Nathan?" I considered how to respond, finally settling on, "Better than expected. We're focusing on Sophia now." Her reply came quickly. "Good. By the way, the board approved Abigail Chen for the marketing director position this morning. One less thing for you to worry about." I smiled, grateful for Elena's. 6 weeks after Sophia's unexpected arrival, I stood in the NICU doorway watching Nathan carefully lift our daughter from her incubator. She no longer needed oxygen support, and most of the monitoring wires had been removed. At 5 pounds, 8 ounces, she was finally approaching the weight of a typical newborn. "Ready for kangaroo time, princess?" Nathan murmured, expertly positioning Sophia against his bare chest and covering her with a light blanket. The tenderness in his voice and movements never failed to surprise me. In these weeks of shared NICU visits, I had witnessed a transformation in Nathan that I wouldn't have thought possible. The self-centered, career-obsessed man who had cheated on me had been replaced by someone who arranged his entire schedule around Sophia's feeding times, who asked thoughtful questions of the medical staff, who never missed a single day's visit. Despite having found temporary work at a small advertising agency in Tacoma, a 40-minute commute each way. "She's having a great day," the NICU nurse informed me, noticing my presence. "Dr. Lin thinks she might be ready to go home next week if she continues gaining weight at this rate." "That's wonderful news," I said, moving further into the room. Nathan looked up, nodding a greeting as he continued to murmur softly to Sophia. "I'll leave you two to your visit," the nurse said tactfully, stepping away to check on another baby. I settled into the rocking chair opposite Nathan. "How was she? This morning?" "Perfect," he replied, a small smile playing at his lips as Sophia's tiny hand clutched his finger. "She took her entire bottle in record time, and the respiratory therapist said her lungs sound clear." I nodded, pleased but also anxious about the upcoming transition. "We need to discuss arrangements for when she's discharged." Nathan's expression grew serious, though he continued gently stroking Sophia's back. "I've been thinking about that. I know we agreed on joint custody, but given her prematurity and ongoing medical needs, maybe we should consider a different approach for the first few months." "There's one more thing," Nathan said finally, his expression growing serious. "About the job at Artemis." I stiffened, my guard immediately rising. "That matter is closed, Nathan. The hiring committee made their decision." "I know," he said quickly. "And I understand why. I lied in the interview and that was unacceptable. He sighed deeply. "I wanted to apologize for putting you in that position, for trying to use our personal connection to influence a professional decision. It was inappropriate and unfair to you." I blinked, surprised by what seemed like genuine contrition. "Thank you for saying that. I've been doing a lot of thinking, since yesterday," he continued, "about the kind of father I want to be for Sophia, the kind of example I want to set. And I realized I've been going about everything all wrong." "How so?" I asked cautiously, still wary of manipulation. "I've been focused on myself, my career, my reputation, my needs, not on what's best for you or for our daughter. He leaned forward, his expression earnest. I'm going to do better, Olivia. I'm looking at positions outside Seattle, willing to start over at a lower level if necessary. I'm seeing a therapist to work through my issues with women and power dynamics. I waited, expecting him to follow these declarations with some kind of request or demand. But none came. I hope you can forgive me someday, he said simply. Not, so we can reconcile. I understand that ship has sailed. But so we can be good co-parents to Sophia. She deserves that from both of us. For the first time since discovering his affair, I felt a glimmer of respect for Nathan. Not for the man he had been, but for the father he was trying to become. One day at a time, I said, neither promising forgiveness nor ruling it out. For now, let's focus on Sophia. He nodded, accepting this limited olive branch. I should go and let you rest. Is it all right if I visit Sophia again this afternoon? Of course, I agreed. Remember to ask the nurses about the kangaroo care. They mentioned, skin-to-skin contact is apparently very beneficial for preemies. I will, he promised, standing to leave. At the door, he paused. Congratulations, Olivia. She really is a miracle. I watched him go, a complex mix of emotions, swirling within me. The anger and betrayal were still there, but alongside them was something new, a cautious hope that perhaps for Sophia's sake, we might eventually find our way to a respectful co-parenting relationship. As the door closed behind Nathan, my phone buzzed with a text from Elena. How did it go with Nathan? I considered how to respond, finally settling on, better than expected. We're focusing on Sophia now. Her reply came quickly. Good. By the way, the board approved Abigail Chen for the marketing director position this morning. One less thing for you to worry about. I smiled, grateful for Elena's. 6 weeks after Sophia's unexpected arrival, I stood in the NICU doorway watching Nathan carefully lift our daughter from her incubator. She no longer needed oxygen support, and most of the monitoring wires had been removed. At 5 pounds, 8 ounces, she was finally approaching the weight of a typical newborn. Ready for kangaroo time, princess? Nathan murmured, expertly positioning Sophia against his bare chest and covering her with a light blanket. The tenderness in his voice and movements never failed to surprise me. In these weeks of shared NICU visits, I had witnessed a transformation in Nathan that I wouldn't have thought possible. The self-centered, career-obsessed man who had cheated on me had been replaced by someone who arranged his entire schedule around Sophia's feeding times, who asked thoughtful questions of the medical staff, who never missed a single day's visit. Despite having found temporary work at a small advertising agency in Tacoma, a 40-minute commute each way. She's having a great day, the NICU nurse informed me, noticing my presence. Dr. Lin thinks she might be ready to go home next week if she continues gaining weight at this rate. That's wonderful news, I said, moving further into the room. Nathan looked up, nodding a greeting as he continued to murmur softly to Sophia. I'll leave you two to your visit, the nurse said tactfully, stepping away to check on another baby. I settled into the rocking chair opposite Nathan. How was she? This morning? Perfect, he replied, a small smile playing at his lips as Sophia's tiny hand clutched his finger. She took her entire bottle in record time, and the respiratory therapist said her lungs sound clear. I nodded, pleased but also anxious about the upcoming transition. We need to discuss arrangements for when she's discharged. Nathan's expression grew serious, though he continued gently stroking Sophia's back. I've been thinking about that. I know we agreed on joint custody, but given her prematurity and ongoing medical needs, maybe we should consider a different approach for the first few months. You're wondering if those ambitions are compatible with being a single mother to a medically vulnerable infant, Elena finished for me. Exactly, I admitted. I love my work at Artemis. I'm proud of what we've built together. But Sophia needs me too. especially these first critical years. Why do you assume it has to be one or the other? Elena asked, her head tilted thoughtfully. The COO position requires long hours, frequent travel, constant availability, I pointed out. I don't see how I can give both Artemis and Sophia what they need. Perhaps the position needs to evolve, Elena suggested. Just as companies adapt to changing market conditions, they can adapt to the changing needs of valuable employees. I looked at her skeptically. You're suggesting restructuring a C-suite position around my childcare needs? I'm suggesting we consider how to retain an exceptional executive who happens to be a mother, Elena corrected. Flexible hours, reduced travel requirements, enhanced remote work options. These aren't accommodations, Olivia. They're investments in our human capital. The board has already approved my proposal, Elena interrupted with a small smile. I presented it last week, anticipating this very conversation. I stared at her, speechless. We want you back, Olivia, Elena continued, on terms that work for both Artemis and your family. The world is changing. Progressive companies recognize that talent doesn't conform to rigid industrial-era work models. I don't know what to say, I managed finally. Say you'll consider it, Elena replied, reaching over to squeeze my hand. Take your full maternity leave. Focus on getting Sophia home and settled, then we'll talk specifics. As I watched Sophia's tiny chest rise and fall, a profound sense of gratitude washed over me. Despite the painful journey of the past months, Nathan's betrayal, the divorce, the complicated pregnancy and premature birth, I had emerged with my daughter, my career, and my self-respect intact. More than intact, strengthened. 3 months. Later, I stood in my new home office, putting the finishing touches on a presentation while keeping one eye on the baby monitor. Sophia, now a healthy 9 pounds, was napping peacefully in her nursery across the hall. My modified work arrangement, 3 days in the office, 2 working remotely, had proven surprisingly effective, allowing me to maintain my leadership role at Artemis while being present for Sophia's daily needs. Nathan had kept his word, visiting each evening and taking Sophia for overnight stays on weekends once she was medically cleared for it. Our co-parenting relationship, while not exactly warm, was respectful and focused entirely on our daughter's well-being. The doorbell rang, and I checked my watch. Right on time. I opened the door to find Elena standing there, impeccably dressed, as always. Ready for your first board meeting since returning from leave? She asked, stepping inside. As ready as I'll ever be, I replied, gesturing toward my laptop where the presentation was displayed. The quarterly projections look strong, and initial response to the platform has exceeded our most optimistic forecasts. Abigail's marketing strategy deserves much of the credit, Elena acknowledged. Though your leadership of the development team set the foundation. I nodded agreement. She's been an exceptional addition to the team. I'm glad we found her, despite the unusual circumstances. Speaking of unusual circumstances, Elena said, settling into a chair. I heard Nathan found a permanent position. Yes, with a mid-sized agency in Portland, I confirmed. He's starting as a senior account manager rather than creative director, a step down in title and salary, but a fresh start. How will that affect your custody arrangement? We're adjusting, I explained. He'll have Sophia for full weekends, twice a month, plus extended visits during holidays. It's not ideal, but it's workable. And the Portland job came with a significant commitment to ongoing therapy and professional development, which I consider essential. You've handled this all with remarkable grace, Elena observed. Many people in your position would have used their leverage to punish Nathan, not help him become a better father. I smiled, glancing at the baby monitor where Sophia had begun to stir. Revenge is tempting but ultimately empty. What matters is that Sophia has 2 parents committed to her well-being, whatever our personal history. The monitor lit up as Sophia awoke fully, her tiny face scrunching up as she prepared to announce her hunger to the world. I rose to get her, but Elena waved me back to my seat. "I'll get my goddaughter," she insisted. "You finish preparing for the meeting. Consider it practice for our childcare-friendly conference room." Another of Elena's innovations, a soundproofed area adjacent to the main boardroom where parents could work while keeping young children nearby. It was part of a larger initiative to make Artemis truly family-friendly, not just in policy, but in practice. As Elena disappeared to retrieve Sophia, I turned back to my presentation, adding a final slide about upcoming development milestones. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "Good luck at the board meeting today. Sophia's weekend bag is all packed for tomorrow." I replied with a quick thanks and a recent photo of Sophia smiling, knowing he collected these images like treasures. Life had a way of coming full circle, I reflected. 8 months ago, I had discovered Nathan's betrayal and thought my world was ending. Today, I stood stronger than before, a mother, an executive, a woman who had faced loss and emerged victorious not through revenge, but through resilience. Elena returned with Sophia, who settled contentedly in her godmother's arms. "She has your determination," Elena observed as Sophia grabbed for her pearl necklace with single-minded focus. "Heaven help anyone who gets in her way." I laughed, gathering my things for the meeting. Let's hope she has better judgment in choosing partners than I did. "I don't know," Elena mused, gently redirecting Sophia's grasp to a more appropriate toy. "You made mistakes, certainly, but look at what those mistakes brought you." She nodded toward Sophia. "And look at what they taught you about your own strength." As we prepared to leave for the office, Sophia secure in her car seat, I took a final glance around the home I had created for us. Modest but comfortable, filled with photographs and children's books and evidence of a life being thoughtfully constructed. Not the life I had planned, certainly. But perhaps something better. A life authentically mine, built on my own terms, resilient enough to weather whatever storms might come. "Ready?" Elena asked, holding the door. I nodded, lifting Sophia's carrier. Ready for whatever comes next. And I was, finally, completely ready. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.